Hey everybody, JBR from JBR channel, welcoming you to something a little bit interesting. Today I've teamed up with my fellow FETubers, and today we are going to be talking about each of their hot takes. So today should be a little bit of a spicy episode. When this video ends, make sure you check out each of them, link in the description. Thank you guys so much for helping me out, and make sure to like and subscribe because we're so close to 1K and it would help out the channel a lot if you could just, it's free, come on man. Anyways, that's not what you're here for. You're here to learn about each of these FEtubers hot takes. And let me tell you, we've got some pretty good ones today. There's some talking about Fire Emblem Fates, a lot about FE4, some talking shit about FE7, and just a bunch of other stuff as well. So, let's go ahead and hop into the list. First off, we've got my friend Tuckie, and he says, Fates is a good game and Corrin has personality. Fates is a really good game. I think Birthright, and I'm guilty of this as well, what I've been learning from the Revelation Iron Man, but I think all three paths are very overhated. I think everyone has come to a conclusion that Conquest is a brilliant game besides the story for the most part. I mean, there's some maps that are pretty bad in Conquest, but I think as a whole, Fates is just a really, really good game. And I think what people need to realize is, for the people who've been playing Fire Emblem for a long time, sure, Birthright is a pretty easy game, but Birthright isn't really meant for you. Birthright is meant for the new people who are coming into the series, and it's a great first game to play, by the way. I mean, the whole premise between the Conquest versus Birthright is Conquest is meant for the fans that have been playing for a while, whereas Birthright is there for the new fans to get into the series. And I think people need to understand that and not shit on Birthright just because of it. Now, if you're saying in your opinion Birthright is bad because you've been playing Fire Emblem a lot, I think I can agree to that. But saying Birthright is just flat out a bad game, I think is a little bit harsh. And I think what people need to realize is, like, certain games, especially Fire Emblem games, are meant for newer players. Like Awakening, let's take Shadows of Valentia, right? The dungeon crawling, a lot of people don't like grinding in Fire Emblem. Of course the game is not going to be necessarily meant for you, but there are those fans who love the dungeon crawling. In fact, I really like the dungeons in Shadows of Valentia, and that's why I think it's a pretty good game, all things considered. Saying Corrin has a personality, I think yeah, Corrin does have some personality. I think they're supposed to be a little generic. I think it's not really that Corrin doesn't have a personality, it's just that Corrin's personality is so bland and their personality kinda just isn't realistic. And that's basically Fates' biggest problem, is just the world itself is super unrealistic. I mean, you have people, like in Revelation, nobody listens to Corrin until you beat their ass, and then finally they listen like a couple chapters later. It's really weird. And there's a lot of stuff that like just doesn't make sense, people acting out of character in random moments and stuff like that. And Corrin's whole thing is that they just like in Conquest, like Corrin goes and has these giant battles and somehow doesn't kill like a single soldier. It's just not realistic, and that's pretty much all it comes down to for Corrin. I mean, they have some personality. I think Robin is a better avatar, but I don't think Corrin is like the worst thing ever. It's just like their character just isn't realistic, but I guess it's a video game, so who really cares? I've always been a believer that like the realistic aspects should never like take over the fun parts of a game. But when it comes to like story and characters, you need realistic characters, and it just makes it better if they're realistic in a sense, because you relate more to them. But yeah, thank you so much, Tuckie, for your hot take. Moving on, we've got my buddy Follow8. He says FE7 is easier than FE8. That is a hot take right there that I don't believe. I don't believe at all. I'm sorry, Follow, you're not fooling anybody. FE7's difficulty curve is just unintelligent enemy placement combined with really strange difficulty peaks and valleys. So I think FE8 really only has like 2 hard points in the game. And that is like the mid game when like you first start Ephraim's route, and then towards the end game. I think, I don't know, you just get so many broken units in both games that there's not really much difficulty. But FE7, I think the early game is very hard if you're not just spamming Marcus. And if you do spam Marcus, it becomes a little bit harder later on. I think FE7's biggest thing is just you get so many god tier units. Like some of the best units in the franchise are in FE7. You got like Pent, Harkin, Marcus, and like when one starts to fall off, you get the next one. So I still think FE7 is a lot harder because all it takes is not using one of those units and that game becomes insanely hard. But FE8, you have so many of those god tier units that you have throughout the entire game. I mean, Ephraim is so good. You have Seth. Just a lot of those units need like a little bit of work and then bam, they're godlike. FE7 has a lot harder enemies, and I think the end game is leagues harder than FE8's end game, and FE8's end game is like the only thing that's really hard about it, in my opinion at least. I don't know, FE7 has like, there's certain moments in the maps themselves that are like super easy, and then there will be hard moments, and I don't really feel in FE8. I've just kind of, I can play that game like half asleep and I'd be able to beat FE8, I feel. So I don't really agree that FE7 is easier than FE8, but if you want to talk about FE7 is easier than people say, I agree with that one. Moving on, we have FE4 maps are not outdated and people need to learn how to play them properly. So I haven't played FE4, but I'm going to play it once we hit 1,000 subscribers, so make sure you subscribe. But from what I've seen and heard, a lot of people either love or hate FE4, and because it's kind of old and feels a little bit clunky from what I've heard. Just kind of different. Like instead of chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter, you have like a bunch of chapters in one map is the thing. Like there's a lot less map. There's a lot less chapters, but the map like makes up like multiple chapters in a sense. And in that front, from what I've seen, I don't think I'll hate it. I just think the smaller scale maps chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter works better in my opinion. But I haven't played FE4, so I will come back to that hot take once I've actually played it. But I don't think the big maps are necessarily a bad thing. I think I'd personally like the smaller scale chapter by chapter by chapter, and then have the big chapters towards the end. Those are always so much fun. But yeah, I don't really know much to say here, so we'll come back to this hot take once we play FE4. Again, make sure you subscribe so we can play that sooner rather than later. Moving on, oh my god, we have a hot take about Tokyo Mirage Sessions. Okay, here we go. This is gonna be a good one. Tokyo Mirage Sessions is the best modern Fire Emblem. No. No. It handles its characters and abilities to interact with them. I don't really see. The thing about Tokyo Mirage Sessions is like it doesn't even feel like a Fire Emblem game. It feels more like an SMT game. Like there's not really many Fire Emblem aspects in Tokyo Mirage Sessions for me to say it's the best modern Fire Emblem game. I think the best modern Fire Emblem game is Fire Emblem Conquest. In my opinion, I absolutely love that game. I have so much fun whenever I play it. How it handles its characters, I don't know. Some of the characters in that game are a little tropey. Some of them are done very well, but and you're saying supports are done way better. I'll give you that one, because in modern Fire Emblem, the supports are either really good or really bad. There's not much wiggle room in between. There's not many supports nowadays where I'm like, okay, that wasn't the greatest, but I still kind of liked it. It's either like shitty or really good. But yeah, I completely disagree with Tokyo Mirage Sessions being the best modern Fire Emblem game. I think there's a lot better, but I think people need to give Tokyo Mirage Sessions a bit more of a chance. I think it's just kind of like a trend to say, oh, Birthright bad, Tokyo Mirage Sessions bad, Awakening bad. Like people have just been like memeing and saying that as a joke for so long that people start to actually have that opinion. I think that's honestly a video for another day. Just like people make jokes about stuff, you know, and it catches on so much on like Twitter and Reddit and stuff like that, and people say it so much that people start to actually believe it. I don't know what the phenomenon behind that, the psychology, but it's something very interesting, and I feel like it happens in multiple stuff, like fighting games, Smash Bros, like that type of shit. It happens a lot in the Zelda community. Oh my god, they are bipolar. And I love Zelda. Like they hate Skyward Sword, then they love Skyward Sword, then they hate Skyward Sword. Anyways, this is not a Zelda video. Okay, so I don't exactly know who this is coming from, so I wish I could credit you because you participated in the hot takes, but I don't have a name, so I will try to find that out and fix it in post. But they say major branching paths are really bad for Fire Emblem stories with current time and budget. I agree. 3 houses, you can, like, once you play multiple routes, you see just how like rushed this game was. Like half of the game is literally the same, then you branch off into different paths Crimson Flower isn't finished at all. Silver Snow and Claude's route are basically the same, except you just get more shit in Claude's route. And then Blue Lions has its own route split somewhere in there that they just said, no, we're gonna take that back so we can work on other shit for more money. So yeah, I think, yeah. You can also, like, if in branching paths also adds a lot of problems for storytelling, because you have to spend so much time working on other characters and stories and like whole nations of other places, and you have to go in depth into them, otherwise you just have a bad story. And all that time and resources that are put into that could just be put into one main story and make it a lot better. Let's take like the world building from Tellius and then compare it to Fates or Three Houses. Like there's so much that's just concrete because they focus on a linear path throughout instead of branching off into different routes. So yeah, I actually completely agree with this. I don't even know if this is really a hot take, but I completely agree. I think we need to take a back seat on branching paths for now and just focus on a more linear story so that we can have a good story for once, please. I mean, Three Houses wasn't a terrible story, and Fates is okay. Awakening is good until like halfway through, and of course Shadows of Valentia is a great story until like the very end part, so yeah. Okay, Rangor, my boy, says playing optimally is fun, unlike what most people say. You can go for the most meme build you can imagine, like Merle Savant, Raphael, but still be efficient with it, knowing what ranks to pursue, skills to master, when to allocate stat boosters, etc. It just means you get to do more with your meme of choice. I agree. I think playing optimally is fun. I feel like there's this big like thing in the Fire Emblem community, at least for some people, that you have to play exactly how they play instead of letting everybody play how they want. That's why I really like Three Houses, because people can just have fun and experiment as much as they want and have fun with meme builds like a Dancer, Raphael, and shit like that. But yeah, playing optimally is really fun. One of my favorite things of Fire Emblem is like taking a weaker unit and building them into a god. I absolutely love it. That's one of the reasons I love like Fates, because the reclassing system is so good. And it's kind of like a puzzle trying to find out like the most optimal way to build a character, or like a puzzle finding like LTC strats, like what's the fastest way we can beat every single chapter and stuff like that. I think playing optimally is really fun. I really like min-maxing in Fire Emblem sometimes, and I also really like just fucking around. So I think everybody should play how they want, and definitely playing optimally is a very fun way to play Fire Emblem. Next, BA Radiant Dawn says Micaiah is a heavily underrated unit. It depends in what context. I feel like Micaiah is pretty much placed where she should be on most tier lists, because her main thing is the Thani. Thani, her personal weapon, is super effective against armor knights and calves, and for that it does a lot of damage. It basically one-shots those units, and it's a very good weapon. The thing with Micaiah is her speed is very shaky. Even if you want to argue like Micaiah can be very fast, I think on average she usually struggles more times than you're gonna have a very, very fast Micaiah, because her speed growth isn't the greatest and she needs a lot of them to double. Because her base speed isn't very high. I think Micaiah is really, really good as a support bot. She can basically set up a free kill for anybody. She's a really good healer because her magic is so high. She's really good with like long range magic, like physic and stuff like that. So for that, Micaiah is very good, but she's not really a top tier character because she can't like solo by herself. She gets one shot by just about anything. Her defenses are literally just 0, so you can't really like place her out in the middle of nowhere and expect her to kill unless you can find a very, very good way to like dodge tank, and Micaiah isn't really the best dodge tank. You know, like she can do it, but like you have to a lot of investment to do that, and supports and stuff like that. It's not like she has like double earth affinity with somebody going on or something like that. But yeah, Micaiah's a mage in a game that requires you to be a very good physical unit to like one round and like solo like areas of the map. And for that, I can't place Micaiah like super top tier, but I do feel like she's shit on a little too much. Her problem is she just can't take a hit, and she doesn't really like one round or one shot herself on most enemies. So that's really Makai's problem and why people don't really put her too high on the tier list, myself included. But she's not a bad unit by any means, so I see where you're coming from there. And lastly, we have the last hot take from Jigjetty saying Echoes has good map design. I think Echoes gets too much of a bad rap. I think some of the maps are just like too big and open for its own good. I think there definitely are some bad maps, but most of the bad maps are just like kind of like long, a little bit tedious. But there are some maps in like games that we consider good map design, like Conquest. There are some very bad maps, especially towards the late game, that honestly I would much rather play some of those just slow and long Echoes maps than I would playing like some of the Conquest maps where like there's just so many random stupid gimmicks and stuff like that. So I don't think Echoes has bad map design. I don't think it's the best. Some maps are pretty good or decent, but I don't think any of them are like necessarily like, oh my god, fuck that map, you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't think Echoes has bad map design. I wouldn't say the greatest in the series, but I wouldn't say they're necessarily bad. Some of them, I think the biggest thing is just Echoes has like kind of low hit rates and stuff like that, which makes it like very annoying, but that doesn't really have much to do with the map design. I think I think late game though, especially on Alm's side, the map design is pretty bad, just because there's so many like 5 range just horse units and stuff like that that can just move like 7 tiles and hit you like 5-6 tiles away. It's kind of annoying. And then we have some of the maps on Celica's route that are just very tedious because you're going through the swamp or the desert and stuff like that. But other than that, most of the maps are just like, again, their biggest problem is just that they're a little too big and there's not like enough content in those big designs to like make up for it. Like, you know, FE4 has so much going on all at once. Echo's just kind of like, it's just a tedious like getting to the action, you know what I mean? But Echoes actually does have some pretty decent maps that I love a lot. Like, let's take the Deceive map from the end of Act 1, for example, or like the final map. I actually really like the final map. Is like, it just feels chaotic and I love it. I think people need to stop pooping on Echoes so much for bad map design. I think it's just like the map design isn't the greatest. I think that's what we need to say. We need to change our vocabulary a little bit. Well, I hope you guys had a fun time reacting to these Fire Emblem hot takes with me. I know I personally had a blast reacting to some of these, and maybe if we can get some more FETubers on board, we can do a part 2. My Discord is linked in the description if any other FETubers want to reach out and participate in a part 2 sometime in the future. And to any other FETubers out there, I'm always down to collab and stuff like that, so just hit me up. But for you guys at home, I hope you guys had a fun time reacting to these Fire Emblem hot takes with me. I kind of want to have more just chill videos just talking about Fire Emblem. So make sure to give me some ideas to talk about down in the comment section. And of course, let me know your Fire Emblem hot take. I've been your boy, JBR from JBR channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Also, help me get to 1K, please. I'm so close, man. Anyways, bye.